Oh, welcome, dog. We gonna see how hard they ride. What's up, my dudes? We got the Las Vegas SuperMotocross on MX Simulator. Had to check this one out. Definitely think that this is the best one of the three that they did. That's why I wanted to come in here and check it out, kind of talk about the things they improved on from the Texas Motor Speedway track to this finale Las Vegas track. I think it's really important to talk about going forward with future, tracks and Super Motocross series and stuff that they do in the game. So they do have a nighttime version and a daytime version of this track. This is obviously, man on the moon, and I'm gonna do what I do. You got that sick-ass moon in the background. So, yeah, this one definitely compared to their Texas Motor Speedway round, this is way more of a pro-level kind of skill-gapped track right here, whereas the Texas Motor Speedway track was more of an amateur track. I wouldn't necessarily call this like a difficult pro track. It's kind of more in that kind of more pro-am level, difficulty or something, but it is certainly more skill-gapped and separation, and, you're going to be further off in lap times on something like this. Like if you're an amateur compared to a pro, a lot more little spots like this right here, holding the gas down into the finish line where you can make up that time. It's cool little spots where it's hard for an amateur to hit something like that in the game, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's the biggest takeaway I would say that they improved on going from the second Texas Motor Speedway round to this Las Vegas finale round is just simply the overall difficulty of it, right? And the potential. You ain't riding that bike to its full potential, boy. That to me is everything, I don't know, when you're trying to make pro tracks in the game and you're trying to have pro racing in the game, this is something that RF has struggled with tremendously over the since they started doing the Erode system, right? It's like they struggle so hard to get the base version of the track difficult enough, obstacle-wise and rut size-wise and speed-wise, where it doesn't just feel like some basic-ass amateur track that might sort of turn into a pro-level track deep into a main event when the Erode gets gnarly, you see what I'm saying? But this one's kind of got more of it from the first lap on it, right? You got this big daddy fatty rhythm in the back, even though it does still feel like you can come up short on a lot of these jumps. Listen, bro, even though I'm saying this one is the best Super Motocross track that they made, right, and it is more of a skill-gappy pro-level type track, that's not me saying it doesn't have its problems, and that's certainly not me saying it couldn't be a lot better. One big aspect of it, I don't know if you can tell in these corners, but every one of the outsides is basically just pointless. I don't know why they chose to do this, but it's like they went in there and just rolled off, cut down all the outside berms to about half of the size that they should have been. Sound familiar? Gee, that's about what they did with like almost all of their outdoor tracks this year. They just cut off all the berms, chopped them in half, bro. Smoothed out all the outside berms so you couldn't do that like wide open tomac around the outside kind of thing. This track is definitely still like that, right? Okay, so this is the daytime version of the track right here. Cool having two different versions. They feel completely different. The nighttime one's got shadows and shading going on. It's a little bit different trying to see the ruts and shit. What would have been really badass is if they would have had different pre-made levels, going from like the daytime quote-unquote practice version of the track. Would have been cool to have seen like the nighttime version have more beefed up pre-made, bigger, ruts and berms. you know, a little bit more gnarly roughness. That just would have been badass to me. I still think that needs to be something that they need to look at. I've been saying it from the very beginning, but multiple versions, different levels of pre-made, I think is only going to create more line options. It's only going to create a more realistic experience. I just don't think it's that realistic to go from perfectly smooth one version of the track with, you know, 420,000 a road level, you know, terrain deformation cranked on 10 trillion, and then you go from that like super flat basic rolled off to making the terrain deformation system do everything every single time you're out on the track for every single practice session and every moto. That's just not the most realistic way to be doing it. The most realistic way is multiple versions, you know, like a practice version, a race version, a main event version type shit. Vary up the rut placement and the pre-made, you know, level. That really is the key right there. Multiple versions and lowering the deformation level. That's the key. So yeah, you know, whatever you want to talk about when you're reviewing these different tracks, whether they're RF tracks or whatever, but if they're technically doing pro racing on it, it all comes back around to what's that overall difficulty range? How much can a pro separate theirself from an amateur? That to me is the most important aspect. You know, they did a really good job with that this year on some of the Supercross tracks with giving you big enough whoops, big enough rhythms. You know, a lot of those tracks weren't like super built around the Erode system, and I feel like they were really going in a good direction there. But then we get to outdoors, and it just felt like they started to smooth everything back off again, roll everything back off again. Then it became more built around the Erode system again. And anytime they start going more down that rabbit hole, down that kind of road, it just never fails. You end up having a more basic, amateur, easy, boring track experience, right? This track right here is kind of like what I would call semi-built for a road, maybe like 50-50, something like that, right? It's got some kind of technical spots on it, like kind of tricky to get this triple in right here, especially on a 250. But like you get to this corner right here, why the hell is this one rut going through the middle right here? What? There's no berm, dog. RF, I say RF, it ain't even fucking RF, whatever the fuck y'all boys are. Where's the berm? There's no berm. It's like, yeah, y'all did okay by putting some of these ruts in some of these spots. Where the hell is the berms, dogs? Shee. I mean, damn. If you watch this race in real life, you would know there was actually kind of two line options here where they would go kind of, you know, really go around the outside, or they would go like up the inside right here. This just isn't that at all. It's just not that at all, bro. So even though I feel like there's some elements of this track that are good, you know, one of them being like when you get to the outdoor section, feels like they opened up the scaling finally, fucking finally, you know, definitely compared to their first two SuperMotocross rounds. This one really has more of that higher speed element to the outdoor section, and speed is always a separator. You know, you get on like their Texas Motor Speedway track, feels like it don't even matter. Like speed isn't even a factor to it because the track limits you from going fast. Everywhere on it just limits you, right? You got to find ways to create that speed skill gap, and I feel like a lot of the tracks that are built around the deformation, like entirely, they cut all that away, they kill all that because they make the ruts smaller, they make the berms smaller, they smooth everything out, they make the tracks easier, and then you don't have as much speed skill gap. Do you see what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, that's what that comes down to. But yeah, I still feel like, especially this whole area that jumps over this wall, or I say wall, whatever the hell you want to call it, over this over-under bridge section right here. This shit looked like they kind of cram this in here a little bit, right? It's kind of some goofy ass, you know, really squished together kind of scaling. And on top of that, there's a motherfucking invisible wall on a jump where it's like, it's not just preventing you from hitting a big jump that would be unrealistic. It's literally like, you can still jump into this. You can still, like, I think, triple into it. But the second you try to quad into it over one more roller, you're going to hit a magical invisible wall. What the hell is that? That is probably one of the dumbest examples of an invisible wall that I have seen on any track. It's one thing when you stop somebody from trying to jump over the finish line or something, but yo, what the hell are y'all doing right here?